the forgotten era? Are we merely the heirs of gods? Prologue. The architecture of lies. Close your eyes for a moment, and let's conduct a thought experiment. Imagine you hold absolute power. Not over armies, not over money, but over something far more powerful. You wield power over the past. You hold in your hands the keys to all human knowledge. You're the architect of reality. An army of scribes, historians, and chroniclers awaits with sharpened quills, ready to transcribe on a paper precisely the version of events that originated in your mind, not the one that actually occurred. Scientists, researchers, academics, all depend on your single signature, your grant, your permission. Maps of continents, dynastic timelines, textbooks, from which millions of children learn. All are like soft clay in your hands, which you can shape at will. You build the edifice of history, where every brick fits the official narrative. Everything is coherent, logical, and controlled, until suddenly, into this perfectly ordered, sterile world creeps dissonance. Someone, perhaps unaware of the danger, a messenger, brings you an artifact that shatters your peace. They lay before you evidence that shouldn't exist. You see an iron pillar that defies chemistry and resists corrosion for 1,000 years. You see granite, hard as diamond, bearing marks of having once been as soft as morning dew. You see a precise technical sketch of an electric lamp from an era when humanity supposedly huddled in fear of its own shadow around cave fires. What do you do in such a moment? How do you react when the foundations of your lie begin to crack? Do you have the courage to rise and admit before the world, we were wrong? Beings greater than us once walked this earth, wiser, more advanced. Or will fear of losing authority and power prevail? Will you order those inconvenient pieces of evidence hidden away in the deepest concrete vaults, seal the entrances with lead, and publicly declare it all to be mere fairy tales, myths, and religious fantasies of primitive peoples? Open your eyes. Let's face the truth. This is not a hypothetical scenario. This is the reality we live in. Chapter 1. The Iron Pillar of Delhi. Now let us travel through space and time. Let us go to the sweltering, bustling city of Delhi, the capital of India. Step inside the cool walls of the Qutb Minar complex. Or imagine yourself in a main hall of the National Museum. You walk past endless rows of display cases. You see golden trinkets, intricately carved figurines of multi-armed deities, dusty scrolls, crumbling just from being looked at. This is standard heritage. Exactly what you'd expect in a museum. Yet at some point, slightly off to the side, stands something that at first glance seems utterly mundane. An ordinary, dark pillar. A metal column. It rises 7 meters high and weighs about 6 tons. To a layperson, just another piece of old metal. But step closer. Just stop for a moment. Take a deep breath and read the informational plaque. Let the facts sink into your consciousness. That's when your secure worldview begins to crack at the seams. This object, known as the Delhi Iron Pillar, was cast in the 4th century CE. Do you understand? 16 centuries ago. 1,600 years. For this unimaginably long period, the pillar has stood exposed to the open sky. India is no gentle place for matter. It is a land of extremes. Monsoon rains lasting weeks on end. Humidity reaching 100%, scorching tropical sun. Dusty winds. And, for 16 centuries, in those murderous conditions, not even the tiniest microscopic corrosion spot appeared on the surface of the pillar. There isn't a single rust stain. Perform a simple thought experiment. To grasp the scale of this anomaly, go to a hardware store. Buy the most ordinary solid iron nail. Hammer it into a fence outside your house. Return after 1 year. It will be covered in a rusty patina. Return after 5 years. It will start flaking. Its structure will be compromised. After a decade, it will turn into rusty dust, which the wind will scatter across the grass. Meanwhile, this ancient pillar stands untouched, mocking the passage of time and the laws of thermodynamics. When modern materials engineers, equipped with the best equipment, decided to investigate this phenomenon, the results shocked them. Spectrographic analysis revealed something impossible. The iron purity in this monolith is 99.72%. You must understand the significance of this number. This level of metal purification, such metallurgical perfection, humanity, our technological civilization achieved only in the mid-20th century. It required advanced vacuum furnaces, complex electrolysis, enormous energy expenditure, and sterile laboratory conditions. Before the modern era, every primitive attempt to smelt iron in bloomeries resulted in impurities remaining in the metal. Carbon, sulfur, phosphorus, these were inseparable companions of ancient blacksmithing. These very elements feed rust. They cause the metal to react with oxygen and deteriorate. But not here. At the end of the last century, a group of distinguished American metallurgists took up the challenge. They wanted to recreate the iron from Delhi under laboratory conditions. They used the best computers to model alloys. They used state-of-the-art vacuum furnaces. They were confident in their success. They suffered a humiliating defeat. Their samples were either too brittle and cracked during attempted processing, or, despite their efforts, began corroding after just a few months of exposure to moisture. They were missing something, some secret ingredient, a technical nuance knowledge possessed by ancient masters. While we, proud people of the atomic and silicon age, have no clue whatsoever, we've overlooked something fundamental. Chapter 2. The Shadow of Tartaria. Do you think the pillar in India is a freak of nature? An isolated miracle? A mistake? It's not an isolated Badapict. In various corners of the earth, we find metal artifacts that defy the linear view of history. Let's look at the Far East. In China, excavations uncovered the Gojian sword. This weapon had lain for 2,500 years. Conditions perfect for completely destroying metal. When archaeologists pulled it from its scabbard, they were speechless. Its blade still gleamed. It was so sharp that a researcher cut his finger. While testing the edge, the metal hadn't oxidized at all. Its surface bore an intricate pattern, untouched by time. Now let's move to Turkey. There, a dagger forged from meteoritic iron was found, dated to 3,000 years ago. The problem is that working meteoritic iron is a metallurgical nightmare. It requires temperatures and precision, supposedly completely unknown in those times. Yet someone forged it. Someone gave it shape. Thus, we have a paradox that should keep historians awake at night. Official science teaches us that in those eras, humans barely managed primitive blacksmithing, that their tools were crude and impermanent. Yet physical evidence, actual objects, which can be touched and measured, suggest that someone was producing steel of the future. A question arises, one that academic textbooks avoid like fire, and history teachers are afraid to ask. If in the 4th century they could work metal at a level that we ourselves barely achieved in the 20th century, then what else were they capable of? If their metallurgy was so advanced, then how advanced was their medicine? Their astronomy? Their energy technology? What other technological wonders have been forgotten? Did this knowledge vanish naturally, or was it deliberately erased from the pages of history? The Iron Pillar of Delhi is not an isolated Indian anomaly. It's a remnanta fragment of a global technological system. Among alternative researchers, the term Tartaria is increasingly mentioned. However, this does not refer to a specific nation or political borders, as we know them from atlases. It's a code name for a forgotten global civilization, a unified, highly advanced culture whose traces, architectural and technological, we find on every continent. Metallurgy, at the level we're discussing, requires more than just a brilliant blacksmith with a hammer in a village. It demands a complete understanding of chemistry at the molecular level. It requires solid-state physics, requires an entire infrastructure. Mines, supply chains, factories, research laboratories, and generations upon generations of engineers passing down knowledge. Traditional scholarship claims that the 4th century marked the beginning of decline, the descent into the darkness of the Middle Ages. Rome was collapsing, libraries burned, barbarians destroyed the legacy of antiquity, and the world sank into darkness. And yet, right in the midst of this alleged chaos, in regression, someone, calm as a monk, cast a column of stainless steel with laboratory-grade purity. Someone possessed technology that Europe wouldn't achieve for another 1,500 years. This doesn't add up. There's another extremely intriguing historical detail. In the 19th century, when British scientists, proud sons of the empire, convinced of their civilizational superiority, first took notice of the column and wanted to examine it. They wanted to take a sample, drill a hole. The result shocked and humiliated them. The metal proved so incredibly dense and homogeneous that their best drills broke one after another. Ordinary Victorian-era steel would shatter under such forces. Yet this ancient alloy resisted like a solid monolith. Look at what's happening today. A glass fence has been erected around the column. Officially, they say, it's to protect the monument from tourists' sweat, which might damage it. But doesn't suspicion stir within you that this barrier serves another, hidden purpose? Perhaps it's meant to stop people from asking uncomfortable questions, to prevent anyone too curious from approaching with a modern spectrometer, to keep enthusiasts with measuring devices from conducting independent analyses outside state-controlled institutions. Metal that resists rust for 1,600 years is a direct challenge to the official historical timeline. Knowledge doesn't come out of thin air. It doesn't arise out of nothingness, nor does it vanish without a trace. If there were masters who knew such secrets, there must have existed an entire scholarly school, a tradition, universities. And this school was part of something far more powerful. Chapter 3. The Soft Stone of Peru. But metal is merely the tip of the iceberg. It's only the first step down the rabbit hole. Beyond this point, things get truly bizarre, overturning everything you know about physics. For if they learned to control the properties of iron at the atomic level, what stopped them from doing the same with stone? With matter that seems eternal and unchanging? Let us leave India and travel to the opposite hemisphere. Fly high into the Andes to what is now Peru. The commonly accepted history, the one taught in schools, attributes their construction to the Incas. But there's a problem. When Spanish conquistadors arrived, and, awestruck by the magnitude of these walls, asked the Incas themselves, who had built these cyclopean structures, they helplessly shrugged their shoulders. They answered honestly, "We don't know. We didn't build them. These cities stood here long before we arrived. They were built by Viracocha, built by the gods." What astonishes about these constructions is not just the sheer size of the blocks, some weighing several dozen, or even hundreds of tons. What shocks is the nature of their workmanship. We're talking about granite, andesite, and basalt, some of the hardest rocks on our planet. Yet they look as if someone played with them like a child with modeling clay. Come closer. Examine the stonework at Saqsaywaman. On their surfaces, you can see wavy marks, strange deformations. It appears as though someone ran giant hands over them. At the very moment. Look at the angles of the blocks. They are rounded, smoothed. This is not an erosion effect. Wind or water erosion acts unevenly. It leaves cracks, chips, roughness. Here, the edges are smooth, as if the stone had been shaped in a mold, or pressed when it was in a semi-liquid state. In some places on the surface of hard basalt, something is clearly visible. Imprints, finger lines, handprints. It looks as if a builder placed his hand on the rock, and it yielded under his pressure like soft dough, and then hardened for eternity. preserving that imprint as evidence of impossible technology. But that's not all. On many blocks at Saqsaywaman and Ollantaytambo, strange grooves are visible, incisions. They look as if someone dragged a tool across the stone while it was still soft. The grooves run parallel, at perfectly even intervals. Each groove is about 2 centimeters wide and 0.5 centimeters deep. These are not marks made by a chisel or hammer blows. They are traces of continuous forming. Imagine a notched trowel, used by a tile setter to spread adhesive, or a comb dragged across fresh concrete, creating a ribbed surface. Here we have exactly the same phenomenon, except instead of concrete, we have solid basalt hard as steel. We find blocks with strange protrusions, bosses and indentations, which serve no structural purpose. They don't connect stones. They don't reinforce walls. They aren't rope grips. They simply exist. They look as if a craftsman molded them from a plastic mass and left traces of his fingers, or tested the material's consistency. Some indentations have a shape that is physically impossible to drill using traditional methods. They widen inside the stone, creating undercuts, bubbles. To do something like this in hard stone, you would have to destroy it, break it apart, unless it was formed around a tool while in a soft state. Modern science and geology are helpless. They cannot explain this phenomenon within the framework of conventional knowledge. Granite melts at temperatures above 1,200 degrees Celsius. At such temperatures, no human could approach the block, let alone touch it with bare hands. They would turn to ash in a fraction of a second. So this is clearly not about thermal melting. It's about something entirely different, a technology that temporarily altered the molecular structure of stone, making it plastic at ambient temperature, and then restored its original hardness. Ancient legends give us some clues. The traditions of Andean peoples speak of a sacred bird that lived in the high mountain regions. The locals believed that its droppings, or the plant juices it used to build its nest in rock, possessed extraordinary properties. When these substances were applied to stone, it became as soft as wax. Western scientists dismissed this for decades as primitive folklore, until the 20th century when botanists and chemists discovered that certain unique plants of the South American jungle do indeed secrete substances capable of breaking down the crystalline structure of minerals, specifically sap from certain species of milkweed and other endemic plants. Their extracts contain strong organic acids, which, given prolonged exposure, can soften even hard rocks. But let's be realistic. To soften a basalt block weighing dozens of tons, you need not just drops of sap. And chemically, the process would take months, if not years. There is only one conclusion. Either the ancients possessed incredibly potent concentrates of these substances, about which we know nothing, or there was another method, a more advanced method. The physics of sound. We know that every material in the universe vibrates. Specific sound frequencies can induce resonance in the crystalline structure of stone. If one selects the perfect frequency and applies sufficient power, it is theoretically possible to temporarily break or loosen intermolecular bonds. The stone, without changing its temperature, becomes plastic and porous for a few minutes. This is enough to give it the desired shape and fit it precisely to the adjacent block down to the micron. That's why these walls are so tightly sealed that not even a sheet of paper can be inserted between them. They weren't shaped with chisels. They settled onto each other under their own weight, while in a plastic state and fused into a single whole. Interestingly, medieval grimoires of European alchemists also contain references to recipes for temporarily softening stone. One mysterious manuscript held in restricted sections of the Vatican Library describes the preparation of a special solution. The recipe reads like something out of a horror story. It required mixing the juice of specific herbs, bile from a black ram, mercury, and sulfur. The mixture had to be macerated, soaked in the light of the full moon for 7 nights. Thermodynamics states directly that after applying it to the stone and reciting specific formulas, the vocal vibration would soften the stone, making it as pliable as wax in a sculptor's hands. Other texts mention mineral solutions, mixtures of vinegar, fermented urine, and copper sulfate, which allegedly could dissolve granite. Still other sources refer to the influence of pure sound. Monks chanting specific notes in precise mathematical sequences could cause rock to begin vibrating and lose its hardness. For us people raised on Newtonian physics textbooks, all these texts seem like fantasies of medieval mystics. But the marks on the stones of Peru silently testify against us. They are there. You can touch them. The technology existed. And if they possessed metallurgy from the future, if they could soften stone, it means they understood matter at the deepest atomic level. For them, there was no insurmountable boundary between organic and inorganic, between solid and liquid. They manipulated states of matter as freely as we control the flow of water from a tap. Chapter 4. Pharaoh's Concrete. This understanding of matter led to even more astonishing technologies. If natural stone could be softened, why not go one step further? Why not create artificial stone? A material surpassing natural stone in every parameter. At the end of the 20th century, a French scientist, polymer chemist Professor Joseph Davidovits, presented the scientific world with a bold, revolutionary hypothesis. He claimed that the massive blocks of the Great Pyramid of Giza were not cut in quarries, transported on sledges and hauled up ramps. He argued they were cast in place like concrete. He called this material geopolymer concrete. His microscopic analyses were devastating for Egyptologists. Inside samples taken from the pyramids, air bubbles were found. Hair, fibers, and organic residues were discovered within solid stone. In natural limestone, which settled on the ocean floor millions of years ago, such inclusions cannot exist. It is geologically impossible. They appear only during artificial mixing of material when casting. Geopolymer is an advanced mixture of crushed rock, aggregate, and special binding agents, a chemical glue. The final product is visually indistinguishable from natural stone, but stronger than it, more durable and more resistant to weather conditions. This is a technology that modern engineering only rediscovered in the second half of the 20th century. Yet it now appears that the ancient Egyptians could have used it on a massive scale 4,500 years ago. Of course, academic Egyptology met Davidovits' theory with a wall of resistance and aggression. Admitting he was right would mean catastrophe for the established version of history. Too much would need to be rewritten in textbooks. Too many doctoral theses would lose their meaning. But scientific facts are stubborn. Chemical analysis revealed synthetic minerals in the pyramid blocks, which do not occur in natural limestone from the Giza Plateau. Under an electron microscope, an amorphous structure is visible, characteristic precisely of artificially created cementitious material, not the crystalline structure of natural rock. Independent researchers from the prestigious Drexel University in the USA confirmed Davidovits' findings. The secret of the ancient formula was lost, but evidence of its existence remains in the stones themselves. Consider what this means. If the ancients truly cast artificial stone stronger than natural stone, then we enter the realm of nanotechnology. Material strength depends on its internal molecular level structure. Managing this structure, creating perfect crystalline lattices, requires not only chemical knowledge, it requires an understanding of quantum mechanics. And all of this, advanced metallurgy, alchemy of the stone, polymer chemistry, required one crucial resource: energy. Modern factories consume megawatts of electricity. Where did ancient people obtain energy for their technological processes? Chapter 5. Forbidden electricity. And here we come to artifacts. which mainstream science prefers to ignore, or hide away in the darkest corners of storage facilities. Evidence of electricity in antiquity. In 1936, near Baghdad in Iraq, archaeologists made an extraordinary discovery. They unearthed a strange, unassuming object. It was a clay vessel, a small vase, about 15 centimeters tall. Inside the vessel was a copper cylinder, a tube made of sheet metal. Within the cylinder, separated by a layer of asphalt acting as an insulator, lay a corroded iron rod. The entire assembly was sealed with bitumen. When engineers examined a cross-section of this device, they immediately recognized its function. It wasn't a flower vase or a container for scrolls. It was a classic galvanic cell, a battery. Scientists recreated an exact replica of this device. They filled it with an acidic electrolyte available in antiquity: grape juice, wine vinegar, or lemon juice. The result: the device immediately began producing electric current, dubbed the Baghdad battery. It dates back 2,000 years. According to all established principles of the history of science, it shouldn't exist. Electric current and batteries were invented by Alessandro Volta in 1800. Yet in Mesopotamia, such devices operated thousands of years before him. Moreover, archaeologists have found not just one such battery, but several, and at different excavation sites. The construction is simple, yet brilliant in its simplicity. When the container fills with electrolyte, a chemical reaction begins between the copper cathode and the iron anode. A potential difference arises. Current flows. Modern replicas generate a voltage of about 1 to 1.5 volts. That's not much, you might say. But if you connect 10 such batteries in series, or even 100 of them, you can achieve a voltage sufficient for very serious applications. What were they used for? The most plausible technical theory is electroplating, gilding sculptures, jewelry, and ornaments, to deposit a perfectly thin, micron-thick layer of gold onto copper or silver surfaces. Electrolysis is required, a process where gold ions deposit onto metal under the influence of electric current. One could apply gold leaf mechanically, but the result is different, thick and uneven. Meanwhile, ancient jewelry from Egypt, Sumer, or India exhibits perfectly smooth, atomic-level plating, which modern masters can replicate only using electroplating baths. From this simple fact, one conclusion follows. Either the ancients possessed electricity and understood electrochemical principles, or these artifacts were created in a completely different era than we're led to believe. But small batteries produce weak current, insufficient to light cities or power machines. So, where did they get powerful energy sources? The answer may lie in the temples of Egypt. Let's go to Dendera, to the temple of the goddess Hathor. In one of the underground chambers, a narrow crypt, reliefs are carved into the walls that leave engineers stunned. We see people holding enormous elongated objects, resembling gigantic glass bulbs or lamps. Inside these bulbs, serpentine lines twist, emerging from a lotus flower. Thick cables run from the lamps to boxes, on which deities are seated. These boxes strikingly resemble modern generators, transformers, or capacitors. Academic Egyptologists have a ready answer for this. It's religious symbolism. The snake emerging from the lotus represents the creation myth. The cables are merely decorative. But if you look at these drawings through an electrician's eyes, the resemblance to technical schematics becomes frightening. The lamps resemble Crookes tubes, early 19th century prototypes of cathode ray and X-ray tubes. A man holds the lamp with both hands, supporting it on a special stand, which looks like a high-voltage insulator. The dead pillar. In Egyptian mythology, the dead pillar symbolizes stability, the spine of Osiris. But in engineering terms, it resembles an induction coil or an insulator with crossbars. The snake inside the bulb coils through the air. In the context of electricity, the snake is the perfect symbol of an electrical discharge. a plasma arc forming between electrodes in rarefied gas. That's how discharge lamps and neon lights work. If we pump the air out of a glass tube and apply high voltage, a glowing plasma band appears inside, twisting like a snake. Now consider the logistics. The temples and tombs of Egypt, like those in the Valley of the Kings, extend deep underground. Hundreds of meters of corridors and halls, chambers carved into solid rock. In Abydos, at the Temple of Seti I, there are rooms over 30 meters underground with no windows, no access to sunlight, no ventilation. Yet the walls and ceilings are covered in the most delicate reliefs, vibrantly colored polychromes, with details just millimeters in size. For an artist to create something like this, he would have needed bright, stable lighting. Torches and oil lamps produce dim, flickering, orange light. And most importantly, they emit smoke and soot. In such an enclosed space with no airflow, torch smoke would suffocate workers within minutes. And over centuries, soot would coat the ceilings in a thick, greasy black layer. Yet tomb ceilings remain perfectly clean and pristine. No signs of soot. No traces of torches. How did they do it? Mirror systems. People have tried to replicate this. After 3 reflections, sunlight loses intensity and becomes too weak to illuminate deep crypts. The conclusion is obvious to anyone who sets aside dogma. There was light without fire. They used light sources that produced no soot and consumed no oxygen. Electric lamps? It sounds fantastical, like science fiction. But the reliefs at Dendera, the absence of soot in tombs, the physical existence of the Baghdad battery, all fit together into one coherent whole. There are also modern accounts of anomalies in the 1970s. In the 20th century, French and American researchers, using sensitive equipment, recorded strange phenomena inside the Great Pyramid. Metal objects left in the king's chamber spontaneously became magnetized. Electronic devices, cameras, batteries, all of these failed, rapidly discharging, as if the structure itself, despite millennia of silence, still generated a weak, residual electromagnetic field. Scientists dismissed this as static, electricity, and geological properties of a rock. But what if the pyramid is still operational? What if it's a gigantic machine, a dormant power plant, running at minimal power, like a forgotten mechanism that no one ever unplugged? Chapter 6. Levitation and Tesla's electric lamps require electricity. Batteries provide little of it. This means powerful generators must have existed. And here we return to the fundamental issue of energy. Where is it sourced from? Our modern power plants generate electricity in a primitive and dirty way. We boil water. Steam drives a turbine. The turbine spins a generator. This requires burning coal, gas, or splitting atoms, which produces waste. It requires fuel. But what if there's a way to extract energy directly from the environment, from the air, from the ionosphere, from Earth's vibrations? Nikola Tesla, the forgotten genius at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries, claimed that this was possible. He developed a system for wireless energy transmission. He believed Earth was a giant generator and capacitor, and the atmosphere was saturated with free electricity. All one needed was to erect a proper antenna, tune it to the planet's resonance, and harvest current. His experiments with the Wardenclyffe Tower demonstrated that light bulbs could be lit simply by sticking them into the ground, kilometers away from the power source. However, funding for Tesla's project was suddenly withdrawn by banker J.P. Morgan. Why? Because free energy for everyone meant the end of energy corporations' monopoly. You can't install a meter on air. You can't profit from something that is available everywhere. Now imagine that ancient people didn't have J.P. Morgan. What if they already possessed these technologies? What if their temples, obelisks, towers, pyramids, and columns weren't just places of worship and tombs? but components of a global energy system. Giant Tesla coils. But having energy is one thing. They still needed to solve the problem of transportation. How do you move gigantic stone blocks? Baalbek, in Lebanon, the stone of the south, weighs over 1,000 tons. 800-ton monoliths are embedded in the walls of the Temple of Jupiter, several meters above ground. Modern tracked cranes struggle to lift 50 tons and move with that load. Here we're talking about masses 20 times greater, transported across mountainous terrain. How? On wooden rollers? With papyrus ropes? Physics says impossible. The rollers would crush, the ropes would snap. And here enters a figure from recent history who sheds light on this mystery. In the early 20th century, in Florida, USA, lived a peculiar man named Edward Leedskalnin. He was a short, frail immigrant from Latvia, weighing barely 45 kilograms. Alone, without any machinery, he built the famous coral castle. It's a complex made of enormous coral blocks, many of which weigh around 30 tons each. Edward always worked at night. He never let anyone onto the construction site. When neighbors tried to peek, they only saw that the blocks floated in the air. They heard strange, buzzing, singing. When asked how he lifted such heavy weights with his frail hands, he answered in riddles. He said, "I discovered the secret of the pyramids. I understood how the Egyptians did it. I know the secret of magnetism. I know how to manipulate the forces of nature." After his death, scientists entered the castle grounds. They found only a strange system of tripods made from car parts, chains, and magnets. That even with these simple devices, one person physically couldn't lift such blocks. There wasn't enough strength. There weren't enough levers. Ed Leedskalnin left behind a 9-ton gate. It was so precisely balanced on its axis that a small child could open it with a single finger push. Did this man rediscover an ancient levitation technology? He claimed gravity isn't a constant force, but the result of interactions between magnetic fields, that every atom is a tiny magnet, and that if we learn to control these magnetic currents, we can switch off an object's weight. There's also a theory concerning acoustic levitation. In Tibetan monasteries, deep in the Himalayas, legends and records remain describing how monks lifted heavy stones using sound. European travelers and engineers, such as the Swede Henry Kelson, who visited Tibet in the 1930s, described astonishing ceremonies. Dozens of monks arranged themselves in a precise geometric formation. In an arc, they had drums of various sizes and long 3-meter-long horns. They began playing. The rhythm accelerated. The sound became deafening, creating vibrations felt deep in the bones. At the focal point of the sound lay a boulder. After several minutes of playing, the stone began to tremble, vibrate, and then slowly rose into the air. It traveled along a parabola and landed on the cliff's peak, where a wall was being built. Skeptics say these are just legends, but modern physicists and laboratories have proven that acoustic levitation is a fact. Sound waves can create so-called standing waves, which have pockets of low pressure. In these pockets, an object can be trapped and lifted, overcoming gravity. So far, we've managed to levitate water droplets, pieces of styrofoam, and small insects. But the physics is the same. It's just a matter of scale. If the ancients knew the right frequencies, had powerful speakers, and could focus sound effectively, they could levitate blocks weighing hundreds of tons. There is a deep connection between stone softening in Peru and levitation in Tibet. Both technologies rely on the same phenomenon, resonance, on the interaction of specific vibrational frequencies with the structure of matter. If you hit the right note, a wine glass shatters. If you hit another, stone softens. If you hit yet another, stone loses weight. Chapter 7. The Earth Grid. The Earth has its own song, its resonant frequency. This is called the Schumann resonance. It is an electromagnetic wave that circles between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere. Its fundamental frequency is approximately 7.83 Hz. This is the pulse of our planet. If you build a device operating at multiples of this frequency, harmonics, you can interact with Earth's energy field. Numbers like 7.83, 15.6, and 432 Hz appear in the dimensions of ancient structures. It's possible that ancient builders tuned their buildings like musical instruments. They aligned pyramids, dolmens, and stone circles to the Schumann resonance. They created resonance with Earth's field, and in this resonant state, miracles occurred. Gravity weakened. Current flowed from the air. The mind entered a state of higher consciousness. That's why they didn't need cranes. They possessed knowledge of waves. But on harmony, acoustics, and magnetism. And when we connect these dots, stainless steel, soft stone, artificial geopolymers, batteries, light without fire, levitation, a picture of extraordinary complexity emerges. These weren't isolated inventions. It was one global system. Imagine a network. Greater Tartaria, Atlantis, call it what you will. Temples and towers scattered across the planet. From Egypt to Mexico, from Cambodia to England, all built according to the same mathematical principles, all positioned at specific points. Nodes of the geomagnetic grid. Look at the map. The pyramids of Giza lie perfectly on the 30th parallel. Along this same line encircling the Earth, other ancient power centers are found. Pyramids in China, ziggurats in Mesopotamia, sacred mountains. This is no coincidence. This is planetary engineering. Researchers call these lines ley lines, pathways of energetic flow. Iron columns, like the one in Delhi, functioned as grounding rods and conductors. Stone blocks with high quartz content, a piezoelectric material, acted like capacitors storing energy. The stones of Stonehenge in England are dolerite and bluestone, rocks rich in quartz crystals. Under the influence of their own weight and sound vibrations, wind, they generate an electromagnetic field. It was a free Wi-Fi system for energy. Energy was everywhere. Like air, they didn't need cables, didn't pay bills. Civilization lived in symbiosis with the planet, harnessing its natural forces instead of destroying them. Chapter 8. The Great Reset. But this system is dead. The columns stand in silence, like abandoned antennas. Temples are empty. Towers are collapsing. What happened? Where did those engineers go? Why was the technology that gave humanity paradise on Earth lost? The answer is simple and terrifying. Catastrophe, an event of biblical scale. Reset. It could have been a geomagnetic reversal, a comet impact, as suggested by the Younger Dryas hypothesis. War involving weapons, beyond our imagination. Descriptions in the Hindu Mahabharata speak of a weapon destroying 3 worlds, resembling a nuclear explosion. Evidence of this catastrophe is visible everywhere, if you know where to look. The phenomenon known as mat flood, a muddy flood. In ancient cities across Europe, Russia, or America, we see buildings whose ground floors are buried deep underground. We enter them through what used to be the first floor. Basement windows are actually regular ground floor windows, just buried under several meters of clay and mud. We see forests of petrified trees, snapped like matchsticks by a gigantic shockwave. We see ruins melted by temperatures higher than volcanic, vitrified stone. Those who survived this Armageddon found themselves in a ruined world. Infrastructure collapsed. The energy grid was severed. The machines stopped working. People cut off from technology no longer understood how to turn on lights or how to control levitation. Knowledge was esoteric, passed down from master to apprentice. When the masters died, the knowledge died with them. Only fragments remained. One generation passed. Grandchildren remembered that their grandparents flew through the air and had light at night. A second generation passed. Those stories became legends about gods. A third passed. Legends turned into religious myths. Technology became magic. We are descendants of those survivors who forgot. We suffer from collective amnesia. We walk among the ruins of giants, mistaking them for natural mountains. We attribute the construction of pyramids to people with copper chisels, because our minds cannot accept any other truth. We forgot that the world could look different, that energy could be free, that matter could be malleable. Chapter 9. The Guardians of Silence. But there is another side to this coin. Someone remembers. Someone knows the truth and is doing everything, absolutely everything, to ensure that truth never sees the light of day. After the catastrophe, when the new rulers of the world began building their empires atop the ashes, they had to erase all memory of their predecessors. They had to create a new history, a history in which they themselves represent the pinnacle of evolution, not invaders or parasites feeding off ruins. A linear history from cavemen through the Middle Ages to the present day. A story of slow, steady progress. Because the truth about cyclical catastrophes and civilizational collapses is dangerous. The truth about free energy is deadly to a system based on profit and control. This mechanism of concealing the truth operates even today, right before our eyes. In the Cairo Museum, so-called Sabu discs are kept made of fragile schist. They have an aerodynamic shape, resembling elements of turbines or rotors. They are perfectly balanced. They have holes and edges that cannot be made by hand in such a fragile material. They look like machine parts, as the museum describes them. Flower vases, ritual objects. It's a convenient label for everything. They don't understand. The Baghdad batteries disappeared into storage. The Antikythera mechanism, an ancient analog computer featuring gear systems more precise than 19th century Swiss watches, lay for years in a drawer as a bronze lump. Only X-rays revealed its interior. Where did the Greeks get precision lathes to cut such gears? Silence. The most effective weapon against truth is fire. How many times throughout history have the greatest repositories of knowledge burned? The Library of Alexandria, burned. The Library of Congress, fires. The Institute of Scientific Information in Moscow, fire. Every time humanity draws close to uncovering secrets of the past, an accidental fire breaks out. Remember the year 2018? The fire at Brazil's National Museum in Rio de Janeiro. In one night, 20 million artifacts turned to ash. 20 million. Among them were archaeological collections. That didn't fit the official narrative of the peopling of the Americas. Lusia skulls, strange artifacts, evidence of transoceanic contact. All of it vanished. Cause: short circuit in the air conditioning. How convenient. The year 2019. Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. A symbol of civilization. Fire consumes the roof, destroying the unique medieval roof structure known as the forest, crafted from oak in the Middle Ages. That timber held dendrochronological data, which could have revealed the true construction date and techniques. Now it's gone. Another coincidence. Again, a short circuit. The system fears the truth. If people find out that energy can be free, the entire economic system will collapse. Banks and oil corporations won't be needed. Nuclear power plants. People would become independent. That's why Tesla's inventions were buried. That's why scientists researching cold fusion or zero-point energy die under mysterious circumstances or lose funding. That's why the pillar in Delhi is behind glass. That's why digging beneath the Sphinx is forbidden. Where radar revealed the existence of a chamber of knowledge. Epilogue. Awakening. But the truth cannot be completely hidden. Some artifacts are simply too large to fit into anyone's pocket. The pillar in Delhi stands and doesn't rust. The pyramids stand and emit a field. Walls in Peru show traces of soft stone. It's all still there. Silent witnesses testifying against falsified history. We're told we're at the peak of advancement, that we have smartphones and the internet, so we must be gods. Yet our concrete and steel buildings crumble after 50 years. Our cars start rusting after 10. Our roads are full of potholes. The ancients built to last for millennia. This is not progress. It's degradation. We're going in circles, rediscovering the wheel, while true heritage lies beneath our feet, covered by layers of mud and lies. The question is, what will you do about it? Will you let the official narrative lull your vigilance to sleep? Will you believe that human history is a straight line from caveman to corporation? Or will you dare to open your mind? Force yourself to reflect. What prevents history from repeating itself? What stops another catastrophe from wiping out our civilization as easily as the last one was erased from the slate? No one will give you the answer in school. Television won't tell you this. You must search for yourself. The pillar in Delhi is silent, but it remembers. In Baghdad, batteries still await a spark. The stones in Peru still carry the warmth of ancient masters' hands. We are not the first. We are not the greatest. We are castaways on a planet of ruins. But we can reclaim our memory. We can understand. A world of free energy, of controlled matter and harmony with the cosmos is possible. It has been here before and may return, but only then. When we stop believing liars. Only then, when we start asking those uncomfortable, dangerous questions. If this topic moved you, if you feel that reality differs from what textbooks say, join us. Subscribe to this channel. Turn on notifications. Hit that bell. Because algorithms dislike such content and will try to hide it. Many mysteries still lie ahead. Well, keep digging, keep searching, keep challenging dogmas. Because truth is always near. Sometimes it stands right next to you, in a corner of a dusty museum, waiting for someone to finally look at it. Thank you for your attention. See you in the unknown.